Hi there, off-roaders. Today we're going to be taking a look and showing you how to install eTrailer's 5,000-pound winch on our 2018 Kawasaki Teryx4-800. And this is what our winch looks like when it's installed. It mounts directly to the plate right here at the bottom of your Kawasaki. There is some drilling required in order to get it in place, but all in all it's a pretty easy installation because everything's kind of right out in the open here at the front. This winch offers a 5,000-pound capacity, which is more than enough to pull our Kawasaki out of any sticky situation. The hook on the end is a nice robust hook here. You can see it's very large and you've got a lead on it so you can easily grab the hook. This is really nice, especially if you're in colder weather. Grabbing on the hook here, it could be pretty cold on your hand. The metal's a little bit more abrasive. So this is nice. You got a little easier cloth to grab and pull this out, more comfortable for you. The fair lead comes included and it bolts right up to the bracket. This is designed for the synthetic rope that we've got here. Synthetic rope is lighter and it will last typically longer than your cable because there's corrosion free. You'll receive all the wiring and relays, switches that's required to get this installed. The controls are going to be located under the panel here at the front, so we'll just slide this out of the way. Here we can see our controls where we can operate it in and out. And you get plenty of cable length here, so you could easily be far away. If you get stuck in the mud, you can make your connections over at the tree stand over by the tree and use the remote there. You'll get plenty of thick gauge wire, so you've got an appropriate gauge to operate your winch, so you can ensure that even under extended use, you're not going to burn up any of the wiring since we've got all appropriate gauged wires. We'll begin our installation here at the front of our Kawasaki. We're going to be mounting it to the plate here. This plate here at the front, the skid plate here on the bottom, we need to get out of the way because we're going to be drilling out the necessary holes that's going to line up with the included bracket that comes with your winch. These don't line up with the pre-existing holes, so we just got to make our own. We'll use a 10mm socket to remove the 2 bolts on bottom to get our skid plate out of the way. So now our bracket is going to mount like this on top, but it's easier to drill from the bottom up. So we want to just make the back of the bracket here flush with the back, and we want to have it centered. So I'm going to use this as a template, slide it on bottom and line that up, and then I'll use my paint stick to make my marks. You can kind of see the marks that I've made there. I'm going to drill out the rear holes first, then I'll put my bracket up, and then I'll use my bracket as a template to drill out the 2 holes in the front. So I went ahead and drilled out the back 2 using a 5/16 drill bit. Then I slid the hardware that comes included with it and bolted it down with the bracket on bottom with the ears facing down. Again, this is just temporary, so we can use these holes here and use our bracket as a template. We're going to drill out the 2 remaining holes that are located there now. So now we've got our holes drilled out. We can set our bracket right on top. All of our holes should line up. That was the main reasoning for using this as a template. So now we can line our brackets and our winch up. Just feed your winch and your bracket in. You're going to kind of have to line them up together because you can't quite feed them both in at exactly the same time as they will line up. So we're just going to get these lined up, and then we'll go up through the bottom in our existing holes and thread them into the existing nuts inside of our winch. And the reason why we're trying to go as far back as possible with this bracket is to keep the clearance away from our bumper here. So now we can go ahead and run our hardware and attach it. However, the hardware that comes into your kit, the longest bolts are going to be a 16mm in length, and they're not going to be long enough. If we look at the head of the bolt, it says it's an 8.8 on it. That's the hardness of the bolt. So we want to make sure when we replace it with a new bolt, we're using one of the same quality. So we're going to switch over to this one here. This has the same thread pitch as our other one, so that way it'll thread into our winch. You can check the bolt using the nut that comes included with the kit to see if it threads on your new bolt to make sure you got the right thread pitch. And then make sure that it's a quality 8.8 as well, so it's got the same grade. We can use the washers and lock washers that come with the kit. We'll just go up through the bottom, through the holes that we had drilled, line up our bracket and our winch. It'll just slide up in there, and then it'll thread into the nut. The nut on the bottom of the winch does kind of slide around in a little slot, so you might have to move it back and forth just a little bit until you get it to catch. But once you've got all of your bolts started, we can go back and tighten them down. The ones that come included with your kit are a 13mm, and the ones that I replaced it with are also 13. We can now attach the fair lead. Just slide your bolts in we're going from the back side forward, and then the flat side of our fairlead is going to face the bracket with the recessed part facing out. Make sure you cut your rope there from the zip tie that it had and feed it through the fairlead. We can then attach it using flat washers, lock washers, and nuts. And we will then tighten these down using a 15mm socket for the nut and a 13mm wrench to hold the bolt on the back side. Next, we'll need to mount the relay block for our switch. This is what actually does all the controls for our mechanism and where most of the wires go to. There's little ears on each side. We just ran self-tapping screws down into the brace here under the hood compartment. And we're on the passenger side here of our hood compartment once we open that up, and the self-tappers just go straight down into the brace there. We wanted it over on this passenger side so that way we know that our wires are going to be long enough to reach from here down to our winch. Now we can go ahead and start wiring it up. I've already put a lot of these on here, but it's pretty easy because all of your wires are going to be color-coded, and if we look at the posts on our relay block here, they're also all color-coded. So you'll just simply remove the nut for the wire that you're going to attach. We got the black one here we're going to show you. Leave any wires that may be on there still. Just don't remove any of those. They need to remain on there. You'll get some black covers that come in your kit. Slide those over the end of your wire. We can then just take our wire, we're going to slide it on, and then just reinstall the nut. So we got our black wire hooked up. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten that down with a 10mm socket. We can then attach the rest of our wires to our block here and tighten those down, and then route the wires from this location to where they go next. And that's all going to be color-coded. It's going to be nice and easy. And we're starting here because nothing's live right now hooked up to here, so that way we can route all of our wires. And then just make sure you hook up your red wire, which goes to your battery positive. This is the last thing you're going to hook up over at the battery, so that way this wire's never live, and none of your wires will ever be live until you're done. So once you've got them hooked up, also take your covers here and just push them over top. This is just going to prevent any shorts from occurring on any of your connections here if you use this as a storage compartment or anything. So we'll do that. Well, we're going to show you where all these go. So the blue and the yellow, we've got all of our wires hooked up per the color. We route the blue and the yellow wires. They just kind of loop right around here. This is just a little loop we made. Zip tied it to the post here. It goes straight down. And we can easily see this from the side here. We just route these wires down, zip tie it to the bar along the way, making sure that, see, we got a little bit of slack we need to pull here because this is your sway bar. So we're trying to stay forward of the sway bar. So we may need to just pull the little bit of the slack out. That's why we had the loop up there at top, so we can kind of take up the slack as necessary to keep it away from any moving components. And that should be plenty fine right there. We'll put a little zip tie on it, and that'll keep our wires away from our sway bar, because this just kind of pivots up and down a little bit. There's not a lot of movement right here at this location. But once we get them routed down, we're going to hook it up to the post on our winch. It's the same as up top. You just take the nut off, slide your wire on, reinstall the nut, and then tighten it down. There are two flat washers there, so you want to put your wire in between the two flat washers that's on your winch. Use a 10mm to tighten them down, just like up top. You might need to use a wrench down here due to the tighter clearances. And you can see the color coding located on the winch, so you can't really mess this one up either. And then we just route both the red and the black wires down. Those are going to go to our battery. That's our positive and negative connection. We're going to hook up the black one first. It just hooks up to the negative post there, and then we'll hook that red one up last, again, just because that ensures that we're not going to cause any shorts. Before you hook up this positive wire here to the battery, though, you can see here that there's a relay block that's in line on your red wire. We want the relay block to be closest to the battery as possible, and then these metal beams right here on your little relay block, these are going to be live once you hook them up to the battery, so it's really important you keep these away from any metal surface. So there's a factory wire loom right here. We put several zip ties on it to ensure that it stays in this location. This is all plastic paneling right around here, so that's why we kind of put it right here. Keep it away from anything you can ground out on. Once you've got that secure, then you can route the wire over, and you'll just zip out the bolt, 10mm socket to take that bolt out. There is a nut on the other side, but it's a flat nut. so you don't need to put any tools on it. You can just put the nut back over there and tighten it right back into it. So now we can go ahead and test it out. The controller that comes in your kit is going to have an end that plugs into the small tether that's located on your little relay block here. It only plugs in one way, so line up the notches and then thread the two together. I do recommend also to secure this portion here because you don't really want to be tugging on these thinner wires where they attach to the block. So we're likely going to be just zip tying this to the black wire here, but until we get the exact location where we want everything, we'll wait until then. But let's test her and see if she works. And then we're just going to hit the out button. And there she goes. Try the in. Looks like our system's working properly, so we can go ahead and hook our hook onto the end of our lead here. Take our hook. I pulled the clevis out. There is a cotter pin that's in it. Just pull the cotter pin out of the little clevis here. Slide it in. Reinstall your cotter pin in there, and then make sure you fold the ends over. It's a pretty small little cotter pin, so I like to use a little tool to assist me in bending these over. So now we verified everything works. Our winch is fully installed. At this point, we just need to zip tie up any of that loose wiring that we might have left. We talked about zip tying this up, making sure everything's nice and secure and neat how we want it. Then we can reinstall the panels that we had removed in reverse order, and we're ready to go. And that completes our installation of eTrailer's 5,000-pound winch on our 2018 Kawasaki Teryx4-800.